At exactly 12:41 a.m., a modern aircraft carrying 239 souls didn't just vanish from radar, it slipped into a shadow where technology failed. Witnesses were silenced, and something watching from above may have finally revealed itself. And the world was never meant to notice. On the night of March 8, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 lifted off from Kuala Lumpur International Airport, bound for Beijing, carrying families, students, engineers, artists, and a crew trained to handle almost anything the sky could throw at them. It was a routine red-eye flight, the kind that happens thousands of times a day. Weather was calm. The Boeing 777 was one of the safest aircraft ever built. Nothing, absolutely nothing, suggested that within an hour, this flight would become the greatest aviation mystery in modern history. At 12:41 a.m., the aircraft took off smoothly. The captain, Zahari Ahmad Shah, a veteran pilot with over 18,000 hours of flying experience, was in command. The co-pilot, Farik Abdul Hamid, was young but competent. Air traffic control communications were normal. The final routine transmission came at 1:19 a.m. when the co-pilot calmly said, "Good night, Malaysian 370. Those 6 ordinary words would become some of the most analyzed words in aviation history. Moments later, the plane's transponder, its electronic identity, was switched off, not malfunctioned. Switched off. That single action shattered the narrative of a simple accident. Military radar later revealed that the aircraft didn't crash after losing contact. Instead, it turned sharply west, crossed the Malaysian peninsula, flew back over populated areas, avoided known radar zones, and then vanished into the vast emptiness of the Indian Ocean. For nearly 7 hours, the plane continued flying, a ghost aircraft, silent, invisible to civilian radar. Still alive, how does a plane disappear in the age of satellites, GPS, and global surveillance? The official investigations focused on mechanical failure, pilot suicide, and hijacking. But every explanation left massive holes. No distress call, no debris field initially, no confirmed crash site even years later, and most disturbing of all, no motive that fully explains the extraordinary flight path. Then there were the satellite handshakes. Even after all communication systems were disabled, a satellite owned by Inmarsat detected hourly automated signals from the aircraft. These pings proved the plane was still airborne long after it vanished from radar. Engineers used these signals to draw 2 massive arcs across the globe, one north, one south. The northern arc crossed Central Asia. The southern arc ended in the remote southern Indian Ocean. Thousands of miles from land, the world was told the plane most likely crashed into the southern Indian Ocean, but most likely is not the same as proven. Despite the largest and most expensive search in aviation history, no complete wreckage was ever found. No black boxes, no fuselage, only a few scattered fragments years later, washing up on distant shores, pieces that raised as many questions as they answered. And that's where the story begins to change. Because while the public was shown one version of events, another narrative quietly emerged beneath the surface, one involving military activity, unidentified aerial phenomena, and classified satellite data never released to the public. Multiple witnesses in Malaysia reported seeing a low-flying aircraft surrounded by strange lights that night. Fishermen off the coast described a burning object in the sky that didn't behave like a normal plane. Some reported pulsing lights. Others described an object that appeared to follow the aircraft. These accounts were quickly dismissed, but then came the radar anomalies. Military radar operators detected something unusual near the plane's last known location. Objects that didn't match conventional aircraft signatures. Fast-moving targets. Sudden altitude changes. Patterns inconsistent with any known human technology. Around the same time, US surveillance assets were unusually active in the region. A classified military exercise was reportedly taking place in the South China Sea involving advanced radar systems and naval forces. Yet very little data from these assets was ever made public. Why? The United States, China, and other major powers possessed satellites capable of tracking objects far smaller than a Boeing 777. Yet no clear satellite images of Flight 370 have ever been released. Not one definitive image showing a crash, debris field, or final descent. In an age where we can see license plates from orbit, how does a commercial airliner vanish without a trace? Unless it didn't crash at all, a growing group of independent researchers began exploring an unthinkable possibility that Flight 370 encountered something not of this world. According to this theory, the aircraft may have crossed paths with unidentified aerial objects capable of disabling electronics, manipulating radar visibility, and altering flight paths. Reports from military pilots around the world describe UAPs that can jam systems, cause instrument failure, and move with impossible speed and precision. If such technology exists, Flight 370 would have been helpless. One of the most controversial pieces of evidence emerged years later. Imagery allegedly showing the aircraft surrounded by three spherical objects emitting energy before vanishing in a flash. The footage was dismissed as fake by authorities, yet experts remained divided. No definitive proof of fabrication was ever presented. And then there was the cargo. Flight 370 was carrying a mysterious shipment, lithium-ion batteries and classified electronic components reportedly linked to advanced technology research. Some claimed the cargo involved sensitive materials with military applications. Others whispered about experimental technology being quietly transported under civilian cover. If the flight was carrying something valuable, something not meant to be lost, would powerful forces intervene? Or would something else take notice? Throughout history, unexplained disappearances have often clustered around remote oceans and military testing zones. The southern Indian Ocean is one of the least monitored regions on Earth, deep, isolated, perfect for secrets to remain buried or hidden. Families of the victims were left in a state of emotional limbo. No bodies, no closure, only questions. Some received death certificates years later, declaring their loved ones dead without evidence. Others refused to accept the official explanation, believing the truth was being withheld. Even aviation experts admitted the case was unprecedented. Planes do not simply vanish unless someone or something wants them to. In recent years, US government officials have openly acknowledged the existence of unidentified aerial phenomena. Navy pilots have testified under oath about encounters with objects that defy physics. Pentagon reports confirm sightings of craft with no visible propulsion, capable of extreme maneuvers. Suddenly, what once sounded impossible no longer seems so. If non-human intelligence is observing Earth, what better place to test its capabilities than a civilian aircraft in international airspace? No immediate military response. No direct confrontation. Maximum data. Minimal risk. Flight 370 may not have been a random tragedy. It may have been an experiment or a warning. Consider the timing. The plane vanished at a moment when global surveillance systems were shifting, when new technologies were being deployed, when space-based monitoring was expanding. Consider the silence that followed, the gaps in data, the sealed reports, the unanswered questions, and ask yourself, if the truth were simple, would it still be hidden after all these years? What if Flight 370 didn't crash into the ocean? What if it was intercepted? What if 239 people became unwilling witnesses to something humanity is not ready to understand? Some theories suggest the aircraft was relocated, not destroyed. Others believe it crossed into a domain beyond our perception, guided or forced by intelligence far more advanced than our own. And a darker possibility remains that the disappearance was meant to send a message we ignored. The official story tells us to move on, to accept uncertainty, to forget. But mysteries like this do not fade, they evolve, because somewhere, in classified archives and unreleased footage, the full story of Flight 370 may already be known. And when that truth finally surfaces, it may change not only how we understand this flight, but how we understand our place in the universe. If a modern aircraft can vanish without explanation, if governments can remain silent, and if the sky holds watchers we cannot see, then the real question isn't what happened to Flight 370. The real question is what else has already happened, that we were never meant to find.